Hello and welcome to Stage Perspective. And today I have a very, 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 very special guest on. Today I have my brother, my older brother, Jeff Peters, is on today. So, hello, Jeff.
Hello. I gave you the parade wave.
You did. That's the Queen. Well, we can't say that,
Maybe,
I
maybe
guess.
because maybe we can't say that.
That's in poor
We don't know.
taste, I
Maybe the
guess.
king will do it too.
Right. Anyway. Well, I always had it in mind to have you on, but part of the caveat of being on the show is that we had to have worked together, and you and I have worked together,
When-
because, well, I ran sound for you a long time ago. I did not know what I was
Oh,
doing, and you ran
that's right.
sound for me a long time ago. So
Yeah,
I think that's it.
and stage. I think stagehand
Did
as
you do
well.
stagehand for me?
Yeah,
I
yeah. A
don't
couple of
remember.
magic shows.
Yeah, I don't remember if you did stagehand for me. I do remember you working Maskers Cabaret and we're running that show a couple of
Right,
times. So yeah,
right.
yeah. Well, when we first talked, I said you asked me like, what do you have me on? Because you may have had the impression it's just actors, but I interview all
Yeah,
different types of
that's what I
people.
thought.
And what's great about you is that I always describe you as like in a way of like the ultimate self-employed person. Now I know now you have what people
A
would refer
job.
to a job, would refer to a regular job, but that is a recent development. You worked your entire life as a gig worker, and it's very impressive all the different things you did. But I want to go way back and just start at kind of at the beginning. I know you were born in if I know you were born in Arkansas, is that right?
No, Tennessee.
Tennessee, and then you moved. How old were you when you moved to Arkansas? I forget that. I should
Well,
know this, but I forget.
I never lived in Arkansas.
You never lived. Oh, not Arkansas. I mean Alabama. I'm sorry.
Alabama. Yeah, that was that
Where I
was.
was born.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Huntsville, Alabama, home of
Right.
the Redstone Arsenal, where
Right.
they make the rockets for all the moon shots. And let's see, I think I was 5
Yeah. Yeah.
because we only lived there for maybe 2 or 3 years because I moved to Texas at 7
Mm-hmm. Okay.
and started second grade in Texas. I do
Did you
remember that.
did you go to Duff Elementary? Is that where you went to
Yeah,
school?
went
Yeah.
to Duff, Bailey, Arlington
Yeah.
High.
Yeah. Because it was down the street. So
Yeah.
really everything was so close. So in those early days, do you remember like an early influence? Uh, because I mean, you essentially, I have to back up a little bit. You've done a lot of different things. It's hard to sort of pigeonhole you and say, "Oh, you're this or this or this," because you have a very Renaissance style about you, and you like that. You like to do a lot of different things, like I
Yeah, I
do. I
did.
like to do a
Yeah.
lot of different things. But I mean, I wouldn't say, "Oh, well, he's a musician or he's this or this." But a big part of your life is music.
Yeah.
When does there a particular point in your life, like when you went music? Did was there something like did you go to a show? Did you see something on television?
Well, if you remember, we went to musicals a lot when
Yes.
we were young. The whole tribe. I don't know that we would even be able to afford anything like that these
No.
days.
It'd be $700 or something.
Yeah, exactly. But we went to Fort Worth and went to Casa Manana and saw
Right.
lots of different musicals. But I think that and the Beatles are probably the two things that kind of kicked me into wanting to be a musician and play in a band.
Yeah.
I chose bass kind of by accident, but I was always kind of drawn to that. I remember uh, seeing a magazine, like a musician magazine, and there was a bass player on the front of it. And I thought, I don't know why, but I thought, well, that's really cool. What a weird guitar, you know?
Yeah.
And, I didn't know the difference. I was probably 10 when I saw that. And so, yeah, you know, got into playing guitar really early, like sixth grade, fifth, sixth grade. Do you remember the Walkers?
Yes.
He loaned me a guitar, I think, when I was like in fourth grade
Oh, okay.
or something like that. And I goofed around with it a little bit.
Oh,
Couldn't
okay.
play. But
Yeah. Now that was a guitar, not a bass.
right, right.
Right. So did you actually start out playing guitar and
Yeah,
not bass?
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And so
Gotcha.
I took guitar lessons from a guy from church,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Lowell Ray. I don't know if you remember Mr. Ray.
I think so. Yeah.
And he would come over to the house and
Yeah.
teach me. And so I
I
started
have a
playing.
vague memory of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when we lived on Hollywood Drive.
Mm-hmm.
And he would come over to the house and teach me like once a week for a while.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of goofed around. I wasn't big on taking lessons. So I just kind of goofed around for a while. But it wasn't really until high school, my first year in high school, the bass player in the jazz band quit because he got a scholarship to Rice
Hmm.
University, and he needed to do certain classes to get into that school.
Oh, okay.
And jazz band was not one of them.
Yeah.
So I was literally in typing, and the band director came to typing, and it was during jazz band. It was in the last hour of the school day,
Yeah.
and called me out in the hall, which I was happy to do, and because I was typing like this,
Right.
and said, "Do you want to play? I know you want to be in jazz band," because I had tried out and not made it on trumpet.
Yeah.
And he said, "I know you want to be in jazz band. Do you want to play bass?" And I went, "Yes." And I
That's
never went
funny.
back to typing. I left
Huh.
right then. I just
And
walked
type
away. I
and
walked away
typing,
with
just
him.
in case you're young, they used to teach typing in school. Like it was
Yeah,
mandatory. You had to take a typing class.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know that's mandatory anymore. So, and
It
are you a
might
good
be. I
type?
mean, computers are still, typewriters, if you
Yeah.
think about it.
Are you a
So
good typist now? Or are you
no,
still
no,
a
not
two
at all.
finger? Are you two finger
No,
typist?
I use like three on each hand, maybe.
Yeah.
But
See,
so I
but
started playing bass then.
that's a pattern of your life, though, from what I understand, from what I know in my history with you, is that you somebody drops out, something happens, and someone comes to you because of
Yeah,
what you've been doing. Because I mean, that's happened for bands, I know, right? And I know it
yeah.
happened for productions and things.
The first pop band I got in, the bass player in that band hit the sax player's car,
Huh?
and they had a big fight, and he left, and they
Yeah.
called me the next day.
And you got into Midsummer Night's Dream like that.
Yeah, exactly. I had done a musical in high school, and then I wasn't in drama department
Right.
at all, and I had done the musical through the choir department.
Right.
And if you were in the musical, you couldn't be in the play competition because they overlapped.
Hmm.
And then they found out not the lead, but one of the leads in that, well, Nick Bottom. So I guess it's
Yeah.
the way they did it was kind of a lead part.
Yeah.
Uh, it turned out he was not legally in the school district. he was he was
I didn't know
crossing
that.
he was crossing school district lines, which
Mm.
disqualified him,
Oh,
just like it would if you were playing football.
I guess so. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. That's
you can't
great.
you
But
can't recruit across the
yeah.
lines in school districts.
I should point out, just so people understand, you say you're in the musical. You played Tevye in Fiddler, and I want to get to that. But I mean, I always have to explain to people what we're talking about the town of Arlington, Texas, which lies between Dallas and Fort Worth, home of Six
I
Flags
think
Over Texas.
I was going to say I think most people know it now because the Cowboys moved there.
Sure. But the thing about back in the day, they built that auditorium for the town. It was what, like 700 seats or 1,000 seats or
Oh no,
something?
it was 1,500.
1,500. I always
Yeah,
thought
had a
that, but
had
I
a
wasn't sure.
balcony.
Had a balcony. It was huge, and it was a full on stage. I mean, it was amazing. And when they did shows, they went all out. They hired the Fort Worth Orchestra to come in. They hired professional lighting people and costumers and so forth. And it was a production beyond what you think of, like being a high school production. So
Yeah.
it was more on the level of
It,
a professional production. So
well, they would only do them every 4 years for that reason.
mhm.
So they would literally save up
Yeah,
budget money
yeah,
and then do a big blowout every 4 years. I always felt
right,
bad for people that I happened to be a senior the year they did it. I
yeah,
always felt bad for people that missed out completely or were sophomores and didn't get a part.
yeah.
It's like, well, too
Whoops.
bad for you.
Yeah. So you started playing bass. Now, do you remember that was in high school? But do you remember when you started playing guitar? Or that you said that was like
Well, that
early
was
on?
sixth grade, like
So
sixth
sixth grade.
grade.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you're just sort of messing around. Did you ever play piano at all?
I
Did you
goofed
take
around
piano
on it.
lessons?
If you remember, we had a
We had,
piano. Karen took sister
yeah,
took
we actually
piano
still have
lessons.
it. So
Yeah, she still has it. But
yeah.
yeah, we had the piano, so I goofed around on it. I didn't really. A funny story. When I got in college and I was taking theory and composition, you had to play piano.
Right.
It's like you had to take piano lessons and all that. And I did my what they call your piano barrier.
Hmm.
It's like your final test on piano or whatever other instruments you happen to play.
Right.
And afterwards, one of the professors goes, when you leave this room, are you ever going to play piano again? Because I was that bad. and, and
That was
I went, yes. And so, and I did. I wound up playing a lot of stuff. I once
you did.
when
Yeah.
I was musical director for Six Flags, I played all
Oh
my own
yeah.
piano parts.
Yeah. Well, and I know that you were when you were
Now,
making
granted,
recordings
I could
too.
I could I could record. And another funny story was I got called one time to go in and do auditions as the piano player for Six Flags, and I was like, no, I can't do that. They go, we've heard you play. No, in the studio I could play piano. Just put it that
Right.
way.
Yeah.
It's like,
Okay.
no, I can't sight read and play like those guys do.
Oh yeah, those guys are amazing. I know that you've recorded in the past. You've done like soundtracks, or you've done film scores, or
Yeah.
you've done something on a track where you've played trumpet, you've sung the vocals, played the piano, and done the bass, and you just put it all together. So
Yeah. And I would play guitar every once in a while, but there again, if I had the budget, I would bring in a good guitar player, depending on what it was. Maybe I would play rhythm guitar and have
right.
have a guitar player come in and play lead.
Was it junior high where you started playing trumpet?
Yeah.
So, and that was just, was there
Seventh grade.
any lead into that? Was there any like, was it
No,
just a
it was just
random
like,
thing?
I think, yeah, I mean, at first I think I wanted to play sax.
Huh, that's funny.
And yeah, I think I wanted to play sax, like tenor or alto sax. And, you kind of do a little test or something. They come to the school, and for some reason they were like, no, you'd be better on a brass instrument.
Well, here's the funny story about that. Because you played trumpet, you're my older brother. I wanted to play trumpet. And when we went to the same evening, and they were like, no, you're not going to play trumpet. You need to play alto sax. And I was like, okay, so I've never heard you say you wanted to play sax. That's funny. Yeah. So, but I was very happy to play sax. It actually was very nice. So, played it for a while. So, but you made more of a career out of it than I did, which was great.
Trumpet was real weird because it's a very, to me, it's a very hard instrument. I played it all through junior high and high school. I wasn't very good. I never got in jazz band on trumpet.
Oh.
But because I was playing in like pop bands, it would be like a cool second instrument to be able to switch to for certain things. And so I kind of kept it up and played it for a while. And then in college, I actually took some lessons from one of the professors. And then I didn't play for probably 10 years.
Oh.
And then I was at Six Flags, playing at Six Flags, and the clarinet player in the Dixieland band came to me because I had been subbing on bass in the Dixieland band, and he knew I could sing and be funny. So he was like, if you could get your trumpet chops up, you could play trumpet and sing a lot of songs with me, cut up with the audience, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I did. And then I wound up playing another 15, 20 years jazz gigs.
Yeah. And that turned at Six Flags turned into a gig.
Yeah. Then that turned
because
into
of that. Like you were playing the summers, and then you guys would do the Christmases.
I played 3 summers. Yeah, I played 3 summers on trumpet out at Six Flags.
Yeah.
So I got to where I knew probably 60, 70 Dixieland songs.
Right.
Without looking.
Yeah.
And could play. Well, I remember playing some parties. I remember playing all day at Six Flags. And they were short sets. It's not like we played hour-long sets.
Right. Then you go out for like 30 minutes maybe or something.
Yeah, you do 30 on, 30 off.
Yeah.
But you do 5 or 6 of those a day. And then we took a break, and then we played the All-Star. The All-Star game was in Arlington that summer. And we went and played conventions at night.
Wow.
And played like 4-hour gigs.
Yeah.
And so at one time I had a lot of chops. I could play like really long time. And
I remember always coming into your room, and you just would keep playing trumpet, and I'd be trying to talk to you, and you would play more. That's my early memories. That was when you were practicing.
That was just being
you being an older brother.
Yeah, exactly.
I would go, Jeff, and you would go, ba, ba, da, da, and I go, Jeff, da, 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 and you would just keep going.
Yeah.
So
can't hear you. Can't hear you right now.
It's like diving under the pool. Like you got to get out. I can't hear you. I'm going under. But that was that. I know that really opened up a lot of doors as well. But I mean, as when you played bass, your first reel. You told me you had a job for like a very short amount of time you were a dishwasher.
I was a dishwasher. There was a steak house in Arlington.
Right.
Small chain. It's not a nationwide chain, It was called
What was that?
Steak and
Steak and
Ale.
ale. Yeah.
And I was 16 and I washed dishes there.
Hmm.
Our dad got me a job at Pizza Hut that I lasted about 3 months.
Right.
This is all in high school.
Right.
And uh, it was fun. Funny story about that. My first day was also the new manager's first day. He didn't
Oh
know it was
no.
my first day.
Huh.
And it was Saturday and we had a rush. I had not even been trained. And I'm just like slapping stuff together back there. He's like, "What are you doing?"
I don't
I go,
know.
I don't know. It's my first day.
It's funny.
So yeah, it was kind of funny.
But I always tell the
But none
story.
of those jobs lasted
Yeah.
very long.
Yeah.
The first job was Baskin and Robbins ice cream.
Oh, that was your very first
And
job?
yeah, that was my
Oh,
very first, like,
how old were you, like 15 or 16?
no, I say first job. My first job was teaching swimming lessons
Oh, right.
for the Red
Well,
Cross
right.
in the
Because you
summer.
are you were at one time, you were a certified lifeguard,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. You had
yes,
gone through all the training and
yeah.
you were a certified lifeguard. Did you work as a lifeguard at the pool or
No, I
recreation
never
center?
did.
But
No.
you did teach lessons. I know that.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
actually saved 3 people, though.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, 2 adults. I
When
was
when
teaching.
when did this
I,
happen?
I was teaching adult swim class at night
Mm-hmm.
at the same pool. I don't know
Oh,
if you
okay.
remember Randall Mill
Yeah.
public
Mm-hmm.
pool.
Yeah.
And swimming adults is usually because they're afraid of the water.
Oh, interesting.
And so we would get in the deep end and they would
Mm-hmm.
freak. And I was
Oh,
like sopping wet. I was maybe 115 pounds.
yeah.
I was 5'10". I was the same height I am now,
You were a rail when you were younger.
but I
Yeah.
was really thin, like 120 maybe,
Yeah.
and I would
Yeah.
jump in and swim and get under these 250
Yeah.
pound guys and pull them out of the water. I don't know how I did it. I
Mm.
did it twice. And then at
Wow.
our own pool during like Lori's party or something like that, a little
Mm-hmm.
kid, that was easy.
Yeah. We used to have those big parties where the band would come over and it'd be like 30, 40 people in the backyard,
Yeah.
so crazy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I didn't know. I never heard that story. I never heard that you had
Yeah.
saved lives. That's very nice to know.
Well, there were lots of other people around. It
Sure,
was like,
but
I got them out of the water. I got them out of
right.
the pool. That was
Yeah.
basically what I did.
But you had your job at Baskin Robbins, Pizza Hut. Of course, you washing dishes at Steak and Ale. But I've always heard the story that you started working in clubs before you were 18.
Yes.
And they had to come down and sort of give quote permission for you to be there because you were in a nightclub playing
Three
bass.
of us in the
So.
3 of us in the band were under 18.
Mm-hmm.
John, the drummer, had just turned 18.
This is John Pollard. Yeah.
And I had just turned 17 in December, and this was February.
Okay.
So I had to have, for one thing, Mom did not want me to play in a nightclub.
Right.
And Dad said, he's a musician. What else is he going to do?
What do you think he's going to do? Right.
So there was a big argument. The guitar player's dad came over. There was this big meeting in the living room, in the den rather, on Arrowhead.
Oh, okay.
And so 3 of the parents said, well, we'll write, meaning, my parents.
Yeah.
And 2 others said, we'll write a permission note. And that's what got me in the door.
Yeah.
And so that's what started that band. And that's the band that I got in at the last minute, right before that gig, where the bass player had hit the sax player's car. That's that same band.
Oh, gotcha. What was the name of that band?
Chateau.
That was Chateau. Okay.
Yeah.
It was the early days of Chateau.
That was the first iteration of.
Yes. There's that we won't even go into all that, but that's a long story. Yeah. You had that for a while and then it went away, came back, then got it back.
Well, it wasn't mine. I actually bought the name from John Pollard for $1 and used it for my production company, studio name, and band.
Right. Yeah. And that I know, carried forward. Eventually you guys, I know there's a lot of ups and downs with that because you lost the name and then got it back. And there was a lot of political stuff that went on, but eventually you had, the band was pretty solid for a while and you guys actually recorded an album. You went to Nashville and
we went to Nashville. Yeah, we did. We went to Nashville because a colleague, a schoolmate of mine was not working yet, but at a school, Belmont University. which
Hmm.
had a recording school. Being in Nashville, a lot of those colleges, had
Yeah.
recording arts as a degree, and he was there. And so for the album was actually part of his graduate work.
Yeah. Yeah. And
He engineered it, and
yeah.
he got a grade on it actually. So,
Yeah.
and we got an
Yeah.
album.
Yeah. You
So
did.
I got the recording for free. This obviously we had to spend money to travel, and he actually put us up in dorms, so we didn't even
Hmm.
pay for hotels. So it was basically just travel and then the money to press the album.
Yeah. And it's a good album. I mean, I think it still holds up. It's a little maybe it's a little dated with some of the instruments that are used, but a lot of those
Yeah,
instruments are still used in jazz today. And
yeah.
I mean, but all the
Well, all the
songs,
synthesizers that we used have
yeah,
made a comeback. If you
right,
think about Stranger Things,
yes,
and
hmm,
like you said, the mini Moog
hmm,
was like in, and then it was out for a long time, and
yeah,
then they started remanufacturing it, and people
right,
still use it now.
yeah,
So yeah, a lot of that
yeah.
stuff is back.
But all the songs are original too.
Yeah, yeah, and
Uh,
everybody wrote.
right. It wasn't just you. I know you
Yeah,
composed a number of the songs, but I know
yeah,
the two Garys composed stuff.
yeah,
uh, and you put that out. So that's another accomplishment in the sense that it was all original work. It wasn't just like a cover.
yeah. And we just did it. I literally went. I had a banker that
Hmm.
John Pollard, the drummer, had introduced me to when I needed a new bass amp,
Hmm.
and he said, "This is who my dad got money from for me to get a drum set." We're in high school,
Right.
and so we trot into the bank to see our loan officer that he introduces me to,
Yeah.
and we want new PA system
Yeah.
stuff. We want a truck, a
Right.
van for the band, and all of this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And this guy was incredible. You would never find this person alive today.
Yeah.
And his name was Sam Cole, and he
Hmm.
goes, "Where are you guys playing?" We said, "Oh, we're playing at the Ramada Inn."
Right.
And so he actually came and saw us, and then gave us the loan.
Yeah. And well, the big part of that story to me is that you had a relationship with him for like 25 years or something,
Yeah,
right?
I
Until
did
he just moved on.
until I moved to Los Angeles.
Until he
Yeah.
moved to LA. And what's even weirder is he ended up going into business with our dad because they had a bank together, didn't they? He became the
Yeah,
president of another of the bank
yeah.
that our dad had an interest in.
Yeah, for a while,
So
and
I
then
mean, it was a
and then he
short-lived
moved
thing.
across town. Yeah, it's a
So so
short-lived thing.
strange, almost so weird.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
But yeah, he was basically a loan officer that
yeah.
believed in the band, and we
Hmm.
had contracts that we showed him
Yeah.
and said, "Well, we're working, we can pay
Yeah.
this back," and he believed us. And
Yeah.
and then I wound up, financing studio gear through him, and
Yeah.
on and on and on.
Yeah. And I mean, your knowledge, I mean, obviously you learned stuff in, high school. And then of course you talked about taking composition and
Yeah,
in,
in college.
in college. And I know you learned that, but I mean, your technical knowledge is vast. Is there a place where you pick that up? Is it just reading? Is it just by doing?
It literally was doing and reading Mixed Magazine,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is just an industry trade
Right.
magazine, mostly
Right.
filled with ads these
Yeah.
days. But
Yeah.
they still have articles in them that
Yeah.
would go, "Here's how we mic'd the drums for this album.
Right.
Here's how we did the vocals for this album." And it would
Right.
be like articles from the engineer. And I would read those and then try to put things in practice. And I,
Yeah.
made a lot of stupid mistakes over the years.
That's what we all
And
do.
yeah, and I often thought about, because I did go and teach recording at Dallas Sound Lab for 3
Right.
years.
I remember that.
And I thought, boy, if I had been working here, started thinking about all the stuff I maybe would have learned
Right. Instead
by
of
by
learning
being
it on your own.
by being around those guys. Yeah.
Yeah. And but you have to point out the reason that they asked you was not just out of the blue, but it was because you had started your own studio, probably out of necessity, and recording
Yeah.
your own stuff just to get it done. And that just grew. And I know that you ended up cutting albums for other people, for vocalists,
Oh yeah.
voiceover work, and doing other things. People come in and do studio sessions with you, et cetera. And I know that when you moved into a larger house, you actually had like a little studio set up, which was really nice.
Yeah.
And you could do full on recordings, and you just learned as you went, like you do. And I know you were always upgrading your equipment. And of course, back in the day, everything was on was
tape.
not digital, it was tape. So
Yeah,
it's a lot to keep up with. So
yeah, yeah. It would be. I would go to the banker that I was just talking about, Sam Cole, and say, well, it's that time. I either have to shut down or redo everything. And he would get out a piece of paper and we'd start writing down stuff. And there
amazing.
again, he was incredible where he would go, how much do you need, Jeff? And I go, I probably need about $15,000. And he'd go, okay. That's like,
it's unheard of.
And he goes, I'll put that in your account. And then after you finish shopping, come back and we'll just settle up. Unsecured.
This is small town Arlington,
completely
Texas.
Unsecured. I didn't put my car up. I didn't put the house up. Nothing.
Well, but you had built a relationship with him, so that's very different. And he knew you were legit.
Before there were things, lines of credit, like home equity loans and stuff like that. They didn't exist.
Yeah.
This was an unsecured loan.
Yeah.
And then we would secure it with the gear, but they didn't really. He would be honest and go, look, we don't really want the gear.
Right.
We want you to pay.
Yeah.
We'll list the gear.
Yeah.
But we're not going to come get the gear. We don't know what to do with it. It's not a car.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I had a Yamaha CP70 electric grand piano.
Right.
And the bank sent me a note and asked where the insurance was on it because they thought it was a motorcycle.
Oh, that's right. I remember that. Yeah.
Said CP70 sounds like a motorcycle.
Right. No, it's.
So I went down to the bank, took him a picture of it, and said, "This is what this is. There's no insurance that's going to be on this. It's in my house."
Funny. Yeah, I'm not taking out for a spin.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because I don't know that you had the conscious thought like I'm going to start a studio. It really did come out of necessity. Right.
Yeah,
and it just grew because people would call and go, hey, I need to record. You go, yeah. And then you started charging money for it to offset what you were spending. So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Interesting.
And very little at the time. I think
sure.
when I first started, it was 25 an hour.
Right. Yeah.
And it went up to, like 50 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started doing more like projects, like doing shows for Six Flags, which wasn't hourly. It was like, here's what I'm charging for the show.
Right. You would put together like a mix of like different songs or composed stuff or whatever. So, yeah. So I know you did like the saloon show. I know you did the palace show. I know you worked on a puppet show too. I mean, I know you did that. Yeah. So a lot of things like that, a lot of different things that you did.
It's really strange. The puppet thing. Because I did some stuff, these were guys that had worked for Sid and Marty Krofft at Six Flags and started their own business, started their own production company.
Yeah.
And I did a couple of shows for them, and then word got around, and then there were actual real puppet people like that would call me and say, we need this, people that had worked for Bill Baird Puppets out of New York, and the guy that had done the reboot of Howdy Doody.
Yeah.
Was the marionette operator for them.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And then people that worked for them would call me. It was just like weird. I had this whole puppet.
You had a little bit of puppet career.
I had a little puppet career there for a while.
And you were composing like original songs for that too.
Some of it was that, and some like they were doing marionette shows, and like the guy Patty Blackwood that was the major marionette guy for Howdy Doody. He used to do the Bill Baird puppets, and they would do the voices live from the rafters.
Wow.
And so basically what we did was record everything so they could just play the CD or tape or whatever.
Right.
And, save their voices and just do the marionettes.
Interesting.
Yeah. So they were like little radio plays.
Yeah. Yeah. Now we haven't even talked about a big part of your life, which had to be a big influence, which is your vocal history, which is Texas Boys Choir.
Yeah, when I was
that had to be a big influence.
Yeah, it was. When I was 10, our mom took me to audition for Texas Boys Choir, and I still remember the audition. We had to sing "My Country 'Tis of Thee."
Oh, that's right.
And then they played chords on the piano, block chords,
right?
And you had to sing the notes in the chord.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that.
I do. I vaguely remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for some reason I was able to do that and got in. I was one of the youngest ones. I was the youngest one on tour.
Yeah.
I made the tour group the following year.
Right.
And did 2 US tours, and then sang at the Hemisphere, which was like a smaller World's Fair. And then and then did Christmas special for ABC.
Right.
And I remember when we would get on the bus, 24 of us toured. And when we would get on the bus, you counted off, and I was 4. I was number 4. So it was by height. So I was one of the youngest and one of the shortest.
That's funny. That's funny.
So was a soprano.
Yeah.
So that lasted 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah.
And then the voice changed, and I got out, and that's when I started doing trumpet and playing guitar and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, the shows that you did, these are high-end professional shows, and you're on TV and you're on tour. So it gave you a great, sort of like my experience was, being in operas. I was in 4 operas, and the scope of those shows. And I think you were in Littlest Wise Man too, which was a huge production with like 100 people in it, and Christmas pageant, and on and on. It's a lot. So those are great experiences.
I did that one summer of what year was it? 69. Summer of 69. Sounds like a movie. At Santa Fe Opera Company.
Mm-hmm.
And I was only in one opera, but different people were in different ones.
Yeah. Which opera were you in? I don't know if I know that.
La Boheme.
Oh, okay. Like me. I was in La Boheme too. We always played street urchins.
Yeah. And then the choir.
Yeah.
So you played street urchin at the beginning.
Right.
And then later you were the boys choir in the church scene.
Right. Yeah. I remember a few boys, and I don't remember if it was Tosca. I think it might have been Tosca, where they they pulled like 4 or 5 of them, maybe 6, and they were able to be like, they got to dress up. They got to be like the rich kids in the in the opera. And I was like, oh, I want to do that.
Was it La Boheme or was it Tosca?
I don't know. I did La Boheme, Tosca, Carmen, and I did Leonard Bernstein's Mass, which is not really an opera, but it's like it's on the scope of it. So yeah.
And so then I continued. I got in band and played, like I said, played trumpet junior high and high school.
Yeah.
But then my senior year in high school, I got in choir again.
Yeah. Did you not join choir until like the last year?
No.
Yeah. Interesting.
Because band took up, I didn't have to have that many electives. You had to have a lot of other, you had to have English and geometry and all that stuff out of the way. And so I had room for it my senior year.
Yeah.
So I got in choir, and then that kicked off. Like you said, we did Fiddler on the Roof that year.
Yeah.
And that kind of kicked me into that mode.
Right.
Of like, hey, I can do shows.
Yeah.
Instead of just playing a band.
Yeah. Yeah. And now when you did Fiddler, you had done some acting, but not really. Did you get like interested in acting, or like did you had you done any plays before that? I mean, you were very. I mean, my remembrance is that you were very good in Fiddler. You were, believable, and it portrayed the character accurately. So, but
what a great review! He played the character.
He was good. No, but it was good. You're my brother, so of course I thought it was good. I'm trying to say that I'm trying to give you a good perspective, but it was great. I mean, it was. I mean, you would never. From what I knew, you had not had a lot of acting experience.
No, I had.
It was completely believable. So
I'll tell you this. They said, "Okay, tomorrow we're going to start blocking," and I had to lean over and ask somebody what that was. So.
No, upstage. Yeah.
And climb a ladder? What?
Right. I don't know what you mean. Down, right? What? It's funny. That's funny. Now, so I know you also did, I mean, as you got out of high school and got into college, I know you wrote an opera at one point. I know you've composed dozens and dozens and dozens of, little jazz songs. And I know you wrote a lot of songs for the album that you guys did, and on and on. And then at some point, I know from what I remember with the bands, you played in Chateau. There was those iterations, and eventually I think Chateau kind of drifted away. Like people kind of went on to other things, and you were not, it was just like the 3 of you. And then you just were, and then you got into a big show band called Dash Riprock and the Dragons, which was a big, well, like a show band, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, if you think of like conventions, parties, big parties and stuff like that. For instance, we played the Kentucky Derby party all 5 years I was in that band.
Right. Yeah.
Big blowout
Yeah.
3,000 people in a tent on a horse farm,
Yeah.
getting drunk and dancing
Yeah.
before the Kentucky Derby the next day.
Yeah.
And it would be an interesting thing, because you'd look out on the dance floor and you'd see like TV stars and movie stars, and then like Lee Iacocca dancing with his wife. You know, if you don't know who that it was, he was head of Chrysler at the time.
Right.
And I met Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
In the same day, Kato
Mm-hmm.
Kalin from the OJ trial.
Right. Yeah.
And I've got a picture of him somewhere. We put him in our band jacket and gave him a trumpet and took a picture with him like he was in the band. I don't know where it is though. But yeah, those we played a lot of high-end parties and high-end conventions and stuff like that.
There were like 8 members of the band.
It was eight people and 2 crew and a manager.
So it was a big deal, and you guys had a bus and stuff and traveled and all that sort of thing.
Not in that band.
That was Chisholm. They had
that was a country western kind of Oak Ridge Boys kind of band. I was in for about a year.
Yeah,
and they had a tour bus.
Right.
Living large. They had a backer.
Yeah.
But Dash was as a matter of fact, when I got in the band, I talked him into, if it's over 5 hours, we're flying. That was my rule.
Right.
If it's over a 5-hour drive, we're not driving.
Yeah.
And so we would get that in the budget to fly everywhere. So even Houston, from Dallas to Houston was a flight for us. And that band was neat because everybody played multiple instruments.
Right.
And then I would do about 6 costume changes.
Yeah, you did I know that you did.
That's when I started doing
Blues
Buddy
Brothers.
Holly.
And that's what I was going to get at. You started doing Buddy Holly then. How did that come about?
Well, they needed a segment. We were doing like a doo-wop with a name like Dash Riprock and the Dragons. You can imagine it was a 50s, 60s band mostly. That's where it had been together for 15 years before I got in it.
Yeah.
So it was a very established band. And so they were doing like this doo-wop thing, and then the main guy would go do a quick change and become Elvis. They needed something in between for him to go do that.
Right.
And so I said, well, I had played Buddy Holly songs, but at the time in Chateau, Gary Wise, one of the Garys, as you put it earlier, he did the songs, but I knew him. Yeah. And I thought, well, I could throw on the glasses, and I had, more hair on top, curly. And throw on a white dinner jacket, and I could play the guitar parts. So I would switch from bass to guitar. Yeah. Guitar player would play bass.
Yeah.
And we would do this little Buddy Holly medley.
Yeah.
And then that became, I had about 12 years where I did Buddy Holly gigs on my own.
I know.
On top of that, just booking as a lookalike or going and doing a little show within a show.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
There were 2.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would do shows with tracks. I made my own tracks that were like everything but the guitar and me.
Yeah.
And I also had music that I could do it with a band. And so there was another group called Legends, which was, it was called Cavalcade of Stars. It was patterned after Legends in Vegas.
Right.
It was all imitation people.
Yeah.
So they had a 6-piece band. So I would do the show with the band with them. I'd do it with tracks at other places. And so it became a very little versatile. And sometimes it was just go and take pictures.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I remember you did one gig where the Beatles were there and Ed Sullivan and Elvis or something.
Yeah, that was later when I moved to, way later when I moved to LA, I booked, same guy that booked me in Dallas, booked me for a casino gig on New Year's.
Yeah.
And they did it like the Ed Sullivan show. And so they had Elvis, me, and the Beatles.
Yeah.
And an Ed Sullivan lookalike.
I remember
the guy from Pulp Fiction that did Ed Sullivan in Pulp Fiction.
Oh, he was the guy who did it. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's fun. And I know that you used to walk around with a little 1-amp on your belt because you would walk around with the guitar. There's a Fender Stratocaster, right? Is it what Buddy Holly played? You would walk around and people would look at you and go, "Can you play that thing?" And you would go, "Yeah." And you'd whip away the coat and go, "What do you want to hear?" And they would go, "Oh," and you would play. So
it's a little battery.
Yeah,
I've actually still got it. It's back here. It's actually just a little battery operated practice amp for like a rehearsal room or something. If you're, and so it had a little clip and I wear it on my belt
That's so funny.
and plugged into it. So I would play Buddy Holly songs at their table, that
Right.
stupid.
Yeah, but they didn't know you could play, so it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know you went to Hawaii playing Buddy Holly. I mean, you booked a gig doing in Hawaii. So
yeah, that was for like a big insurance company from Australia for some reason.
Yeah.
And they had their convention in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And me, and of course there's always an Elvis.
There's always an Elvis.
There was a Marilyn Monroe. There was,
right.
Oddly enough, at this one, there was, what's Audrey Hepburn's name in Breakfast at Tiffany's? What's her name?
Holly Golightly.
Yeah, that character.
Yeah.
She was there. They had about 15 lookalikes for that party.
Yeah.
So it was fun.
Yeah. But it sounds like, it's so funny because it doesn't sound like any of this is planned. It's just like you were just doing stuff. And it just grew, because I don't think at any point the
phone would ring.
Yeah.
And I would say yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because you never set out to say, I'm going to be a self-employed entertainer. I'm going to do Buddy Holly. I'm going to do, it would just happen because you were putting yourself out there. Yeah. So, and I
used to tell people all the time, they'd ask me why I was booked so much. I said, because I'm available.
Right.
I don't have a day job.
Yeah.
I can always go. The Dixieland Band, going back to that, we did a lot of gigs during the day.
Yeah.
We got on a contract with the Albertsons grocery store chain.
Yeah.
And every time they remodeled or opened a new Albertsons, we were the band.
That's funny.
And it would be on a Wednesday morning at 10 in the morning.
Right.
For the ribbon cutting.
Yeah. Who's available at 10 in the morning?
So, 4 of us would go, me on trumpet, clarinet, banjo, and tuba. And there we'd be playing Dixieland music, on the porch, on the front deck of the Albertsons.
That's great.
And then we'd go in the store and play, which drove people nuts, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure. All that tile.
Yeah.
All that echoing.
Yeah, we sounded great.
It's so loud. It's like mariachis in a cement building.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
So, being able to go and do stuff during the week.
Yeah.
That you're not tied to anything. You could go and do those kind of things.
Yeah.
And piece together a living. I remember when I moved to the house that you were talking about with the basement that I had the studio in.
Yeah.
Well, my next door neighbor was an airline pilot. And he goes, hey, what do you do? And I go, I'm a musician. He goes, oh, where do you play? I go, well, tonight I'm playing at the zoo. And I think he was expecting me to say, oh, I'm in the Dallas Orchestra, it's a Dallas Symphony Orchestra or something like that. And I wasn't. I was like just this freelance guy. And that night I happened to be playing at the zoo.
Yeah. And that's the thing, you diversified. So you weren't you didn't just sit with your bass by the phone going, gosh, I hope somebody calls me. Because you also played trumpet and you would compose and you could sing and you could step in. You also could go in and sort of run sound for somebody, or you could compose something for somebody. You might be working on a track, or you might be recording somebody or whatever, or working on some short film. You did all this stuff and it was all within your fields, and it just sort of came to you because you put it out there. So
making me tired just saying all that.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, sometimes you were doing a lot of that at the same time, which is hard. But a lot of times it was not. I know that you ran yourself ragged a lot. So, but you've managed to live life as well. And I think the other remarkable thing is, when you think of entertainers, a lot of people go, well, the starving entertainer, the starving actor kind of thing.
Yeah, I never looked at it like that. No,
I don't think you ever starved. I know that you had some maybe lean times.
There were times between bands, if I didn't have a working band and stuff like that. And then going back to John Pollard later, he started a DJ company. And I could literally call him at the beginning of the month and go, John, I'm not booked on the 3rd Saturday. What do you got?
Yeah.
And I'd go DJ for John.
Yep. Yeah.
It's like a gig was a gig to me. So.
Yeah.
But I did I think I did about 20 New Year's in a row before I didn't do a New Year's one year.
Right. As a DJ.
No.
Just as a player, as a musician.
Yeah.
In a band.
Musician.
Yeah.
Had about a 25-year run. And I think I had one year that I wasn't booked on New Year's because I wasn't in a specific band.
Yeah.
And I didn't try to get booked.
Yeah. I used to always feel
particular year.
guilty when I wasn't booked on New Year's. I was like, I should
Yeah,
be booked on New Year's. Why am I not booked on New
that's
Year's?
right.
No, it's like so bad.
Well,
So
at first, I would have withdrawals, and then I think as I got older, I was like, okay, this
no, it's
isn't so
okay.
bad. I can actually go do something else.
Right. Yeah. And you did do stuff. I mean, I know you used to
Yeah,
scuba dive. You've been on ski
yeah.
trips, you've
Oh
traveled and
yeah.
stuff. So this idea is like, oh, you're just like so devoted. You've actually managed to live life too. And it's very
Well,
remarkable. It's a good
I
lesson.
can tell you this: the very first chateau band that I was in, the guitar player's dad owned a shoe store,
Hmm.
and we rehearsed in the back of the shoe store.
Hmm.
We'd just clear out boxes and stuff and
Yeah.
set up and rehearse
Right.
there. And while we were doing that, that's when we got our first agent,
Hmm.
uh, Levon Rosenauer, Emma,
Hmm. Yeah.
uh, which is also a funny story because Emma became her name. It was Entertainment Management Associates.
Huh.
And everybody thought her name was Emma.
That's funny.
So then she just changed it to Emma's Enterprises.
Huh.
She just went ahead and went with it. That was way later. It's like, whatever, okay. But she came to see us. She actually came to audition us in the shoe store.
Oh, funny.
We weren't good enough. She said, keep trying,
Oh, wow.
keep at it.
Yeah.
And didn't take us for a while. But then there was another bass player. Pat, his name was Pat. I can't remember his last name. That came over to watch us and kind of give us some tips. And I still remember him sitting me down, since I was the bass player, talking to me specifically about some stylistic things that I was doing. I was overplaying. It was basically what it was. It was a 6-piece band, 2 horns, rhythm. And he was like, you're overplaying. If you were in a trio, you could do that, but you got to lay it down for this. And really set me straight on some things about being a bass player in a larger band.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing he told me, going back to the living your life, was, he said, now, if you're going to do this, you're going to never think you can take a vacation.
Yeah.
He says, there's 2 times you can take a vacation, January and August. Take it. You're maybe going to leave some money on the table. Maybe you won't get a gig that you thought you would have gotten, but
Interesting.
He said, do it. Take 2 vacations a year and you'll live a lot better life.
Yeah, you keep yourself sane because I never took vacations till, not too long ago. So
yeah,
it
I
is
did.
very important.
I would go skiing in January. I would go scuba diving in August. Yeah. Stuff like that. Exactly.
I remember.
And those are the 2 slow times for nightclubs, for parties.
Right. Yeah.
So, it's kind of that's, if you're going to take time off, take time off.
Yeah. I remember at the end, just before you moved to Los Angeles, you got real into acting. You started taking classes. Was there something that prompted that?
I think I was just getting not bored with playing in bands, but I hate to say it's a young man's sport because obviously Mick Jagger's not a young man. He's 12 years older than me.
Right.
Or more.
Yeah.
I think 15. But at the time I was mostly playing in cover bands. We had a little stint there where we did the album and stuff like that. But mostly I was playing in cover bands to make money.
Yeah.
And I was just seeing the writing on the wall that at some point that was going to go away.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
And I was also seeing at some point the studio business was going to go away for me as well, because everybody was able to be saying a really weird sentence there. People were starting to be able to afford the same gear that I had gotten loans for.
Right.
I mean, everybody can own Pro Tools right now without a problem.
Right.
Back when I had Pro Tools, I probably had $40,000 in Pro Tools equipment.
Right. Yeah.
When it was new.
Yeah. It's just that idea that it's the digital age, basically, because people were able to start using their computers or using other things that normally would have cost thousands of dollars are now becoming more consumer oriented, and people could do their own recordings and like, well, I don't need to go to a studio and record with this guy. I can do it at home.
I was getting that in the studio. I was going from full album projects to just mixing, to just mastering, to just helping.
Right. Yeah.
And I was seeing the writing on the wall for that too.
Smart.
And I thought I can act well into my older age, whereas maybe I can't jump around on stage and be Buddy Holly much longer.
Yeah.
I was already pushing the envelope. I was doing Buddy Holly at 40.
Yeah. And what was the last Buddy Holly gig you did? Was that Hawaii?
That was Hawaii.
The Hawaii gig. And I know that you got to play with, go ahead.
And I was just saying, I had to buy new clothes. I couldn't fit into the old outfit.
Yeah.
Had to buy bigger clothes. I was bigger,
Yeah.
which didn't really work that well, and I had to do a wig.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
I thought, okay, I did 2 gigs like that, one in
Yeah.
Pebble Beach and one in Hawaii, and then I
Yeah.
went, okay, we're done.
Yeah. And I know you got to play with Gary Busey, Southwest's gig. He showed up and you
No,
played
he
with
didn't
him.
show up. It was his wedding.
Oh, it's his
I was
wedding.
I
I'm
was
sorry. I
I was booked
misunderstood.
I was booked for his wedding as a
As Buddy Holly.
surprise
Yeah.
as Buddy Holly.
That's
And
funny.
so
But I know he jumped up and played with you,
yeah, I did
which is really cool.
when they came out for their first dance, I was there and did True Love Ways
Oh,
for
great.
their first dance.
Yeah.
And then I went into my show,
Hmm.
and then I invited him up to do That'll Be the Day and
Yeah.
Love Not Fade Away for my ender.
Oh, that's
And
great.
so we did it like a duet.
Ah, that's cool. That's
So
great.
so I do have a nice picture with him.
Yeah.
And this is before he had the motorcycle accident. So he wasn't as crazy as
He wasn't as crazy. He was still a little crazy, but not as crazy. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
he was a handful, but not
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. But you moved, kind of like I did, not quite, but I mean, you kind of like
Yeah.
just went, screw it. I'm going to Los Angeles. And
Yeah.
I think your motivation to move was like, I'm going to go out there and try to like tackle the big monster of acting and the film
Yeah.
world and so forth. And I know you got out and you had some small successes and stuff, but it's a very hard business to
Yeah.
break into, as we all know. And you did a few things. I know you did a few TV things and
Yeah.
things here and there, and then you were kind of like
Few commercials. I had done a
Mhm.
few commercials enough to be SAG eligible
Mhm.
from coming from Texas.
Right.
That
Yeah.
I'd done enough stuff in
Yeah.
Texas to when I didn't have to play that game of trying to be in SAG.
Right. Trying to get them unions and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
was in SAG when I wanted to be.
Yeah.
As
I know
when
you
as soon
worked a
as I
lot in Dallas. I knew that. I knew you were doing a lot of
Yeah.
commercials and doing a lot of stuff in Dallas.
Yeah.
Did you do
Yeah.
theater in Dallas at
No.
all or in Fort
No,
Worth?
not at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
No.
Um,
I
so
did theater out here a little bit and did improv
right.
shows and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Well, I
But
know you
there
got into the sketch comedy group. The what was the name of that group? It was on Ventura Boulevard, the LA
LA
was it
Connection.
LA Connection. Yeah, and I know some people that there's one actor that went on to do 911, Reno 911. He's on that show.
Yeah, Cedric Yarborough
Cedric,
and
yeah.
the
And
the
so
Goldbergs.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
he was
yeah,
in our sketch show.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and Andy Forrest was from that particular theater
Hmm.
too.
That's right.
That we've remained friends all these years.
And
From
Andy's
that.
done ridiculous amount of commercials and also
Yeah.
was a semi-regular on
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec, right? And I know, Kyle. And I know you also did before you moved, you did like you tried your hand at doing like stand-up comedy, which
Oh
is
yeah, I did do that.
yeah. So it's like I'm gonna try this.
I tried that. I tried it off and on. First in Dallas, just
Mhm.
going to open mic nights and stuff
Sure.
like that.
Yeah.
But because I was kind of like a guy that was used to booking stuff, as soon as I could, I met a lot of people doing the open mic nights, and I put together a show that I emceed, opened for and emceed
Yeah.
at a supper club that the band had played at. So
Yeah.
I had the clout of the band, and so I booked it. It was a fairly successful night.
Huh.
And so I started booking a little bit here and there. And Bill Farmer, who's now the
Mhm.
voice of Goofy for Disney and does a bunch of voices for
Oh, yeah.
Disney. He was an
Yeah.
impersonator that I booked
Mhm.
for that. And that's also where now I can't remember the guy's name from the kind of country comedians.
Oh, yeah, the
The
like,
four guys.
yeah, I know you're talking about the blue collar guys. Yeah.
Blue Collar, the Blue
Yeah.
Collar tour. One
But I
of them
can't
was that
remember
guy.
the name, so
I can't think of his name.
I can't
But
think of his name.
so I did that for a while. I wasn't very good at all, but I wound up booking a few things because of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And then I kind of combined it and thought, okay, I'm not really a stand-up comic is per se, but I'm doing this Buddy Holly thing, and I could do like a little show and then end with Buddy Holly and book it for
Right.
like after dinner shows.
Yeah.
And so I did that a little bit. There
Oh.
was like different imitations and stuff,
Mhm.
and really strange gigs that I would book. I booked 2 gigs where I impersonated a fake person that was just hired for the company.
Hmm.
And I went in and sat and ate dinner with them.
That's funny.
and then got up and made a speech. And then of course the speech became the comedy routine.
Oh, that's
And
funny. I didn't know you did that.
yeah, I did that twice.
That's
One at
very
somebody's
funny.
house where I literally walked around and I just made up crap.
Oh yeah.
And
And we're good at that.
I was the person's lawyer.
Yeah.
I actually had office visits scheduled for the following week.
That's funny.
And I was the person's CPA.
Yeah.
And there again gave out my name and number, and like,
right.
Yeah, call me on Monday. We'll go over that. And then got up. I had my stuff set up in the living room. I was just going to do a show for him. It was a big house.
That's funny.
And they were having like a Christmas party. And so I did my like one-man show and then ended with Buddy Holly.
Oh, that's great.
And I got up there and started doing it. And I said, how many of you have appointments with me next week? And people raised their hands and realized they were complete idiots.
That's funny. That's very funny.
Embarrassed.
Yeah. I know later you worked with a gentleman booker who had booked a lot of USO stuff. I know you went overseas and did a USO, small
that was
USO
after
tour.
I moved out here. I started
out to Los Angeles,
working for Entertainment Max, and he was
That's
like a comedian booker.
Right.
I just saw him not too long ago.
Oh.
And so in doing that, I said, well, I'd like to get out again. And so he had all these places that I could just go and do open mic without standing in the line and all the other crap that you go through.
Oh yeah.
Because they were his rooms.
Uh-huh.
He was already booking comedians in there. So it's like, yeah, we'll just have Jeff stuck in the middle.
Yeah.
And so he would come out and we kind of honed my act.
Oh.
And then he would give me pointers and say, why don't you say this instead of that?
Yeah.
And I worked up a good routine. And then he said, why don't you he knew of all my background by that time, as far as all the band stuff I'd done, knew I could be like road manager for the gig.
Right.
To take five of us went overseas to Iraq during the Iraq War.
Right.
In 2004.
Yeah.
And did like 30 shows.
Yeah.
At all these different bases.
You told me about going in and stuff, and just all the surrounding elements to that gig were quite
exciting,
I guess is a good word for it. So, do you have
being bombed in Mosul? Yeah. Right before we did our show.
Right.
Was, everybody hitting the deck.
Right.
And then we had to still do a show. The guy that opened that night still had his flak jacket on and a helmet. Would not take it off.
This is nothing like White Christmas, damn it.
No, it's not. But it was quite an experience.
I can imagine.
And I've often said I see why people that went to war, we weren't at war, we were doing comedy. But I can see where people that went to war together have, maintained that camaraderie.
Oh yeah,
forever.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Do you have a big disappointment, like a career disappointment? Something you go, oh, if I had just gotten this, I would be on this path, or if this had happened or something. Is there anything like that in your career?
When I was out here in LA, I auditioned for like a road show of Music Man for the lead.
Yeah.
And got callbacks.
Yeah.
And got down to the last two.
Oh.
Kind of thing. And I thought, boy, that would have been quite a turnaround. Or not turnaround, but a turn.
Yeah.
Going in a different direction of doing that. Funny story about auditioning. When I was in Dallas, I had a weird agent at one time.
You've told me about him. I remember him.
And he was a sports agent.
Mm-hmm.
So he was kind of getting into actors, but he was used to dealing with like the Dallas Cowboys football players or the Rangers and getting them car commercials and stuff like that you always see sports guys do. So he had no patience for me whatsoever. And he would call me and go, hey, I need you to go here, and they need you in bring a bathing suit and blah, blah, blah. And it's like a beach scene. And I go, as I mentioned earlier, I was still about 120.
You were about like maybe 145, I think.
Maybe I was 140 at that time.
That was about it.
But still at 5'10" and a half, 140 was still skinny.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not I didn't work out. My workout was jumping around on stage.
Right.
And so I said, I'm skinny, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, don't go then, and just hangs up. And so I call him back and go, no, I want to go. Where is it? I'll still go. I just wanted you to know I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
I'm not some bodybuilder guy that's going to do a beach scene. He says, well, I don't know what they want, and so I go there, and what they wanted was somebody that could do really good facial expressions,
Ah.
because it was an ad that I booked, a, modeling photo ad
Yeah.
for an HR company, and it
It's
was
a print
get the
ad.
right.
Yeah.
It was a print ad. I
Yeah.
don't know why I couldn't have just said that. Uh, uh, for a modeling gig, and it was in a swim trunks and fins
Right.
and a
Yeah.
mask, and a
Yeah.
fish had gotten in the mask and was
And it's
swimming in the
right.
mask.
Yeah.
And it was, make sure you have the right fit for your job. It's basically, it was an
Right.
HR ad.
Yeah. The
So
takeaway is he went to the audition and he booked the gig despite the criticism at the top of the gig, at top of the audition. He still went and he booked it. That's the
yes,
takeaway there.
yeah, I didn't
And you
know this
booked
was a
it. You booked.
teachable moment.
It is a teachable moment because I'm helping people pull stuff from this. But I mean, you also did like a Gen Weld. You landed. I know you did a Gen Weld print ad and a bunch of other
Yes,
stuff
yeah,
and a lot of
several
commercials.
print ads. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
a lot of that. Now, when you
But
got to
there
LA,
again, I tried to get a modeling agent because of all
right,
those things,
right.
and couldn't get anybody to look at me.
No, yeah, that's not in the cards for us. Maybe for you, not for
No.
me. Yeah,
Yeah, it just, at the time I thought I could do this.
yeah,
But I was booking things here and there in that
right,
realm, but
right,
not enough to
yeah,
be. I wasn't like I said, I wasn't a bodybuilder kind of looking guy
right, yeah,
with the abs and all of that.
yeah,
It's just like
yeah,
I could do the goofy stuff, I
yeah.
guess.
And you,
So,
I know comedy has always been. I mean, just between us, I mean, Monty Python was a huge influence when we were
oh yeah,
younger, and comedies and just all the stuff. Because all of my influences are a lot of your influences as well. I know as far as that and movies, we have somewhat similar tastes in movies and television shows. I have a tendency to like a little darker stuff and a little more gritty. I know, but now you've widened your horizons a lot in the last several years. I know because you used to be pretty, but you and I used to go to the movies a lot together. But I know that when you moved out to LA, it was very, it wasn't want to say it was rough because it wasn't rough. You were not having struggling, but it was hard to break in. It was hard to make that happen. So you got to a point where you were, from what I remember, you were feeling sort of divided. You wanted to, you be more a film composer, wanting to get into composing, but also you wanted to break into the acting. But you were also working at the sketch comedy doing that. And it was just
yeah.
kind of like there was this imbalance and you were like, things are not really cooking for me like I want them to be. And you were still doing things and still performing and still recording and still doing this and this and this. And then you finally just went, you know what? I guess you came to a decision. You like, I need to
Well,
change my direction.
yeah, what I had done is, because I always had the technical side going for me, I thought
Yeah.
I could pick up some freelance work with that.
Right.
And so I don't know how I landed. The first thing was HTV, and it didn't mean high definition TV. That was like the letters of the production company. But they were ahead of their time, because this is way before anybody was doing this. They were digitizing movies and
Oh.
getting them ready for streaming.
Oh, wow.
And so they were taking movies and
Mm-hmm.
trying to clean up the sound. They had a
Mm-hmm.
colorist redoing that, and it was a big thing. And I subbed in there for a little bit, and uh, went went down there once a week and just worked like when people would be absent, and just like
Right.
re-EQing shows and
Yeah.
stuff like that on a digital Yamaha board. They didn't, and then I would talk to them about, you really need to get Pro Tools going in here because it has noise reduction that
Yeah.
is digital, and told them about that. And then that kind of, they offered me a full-time job after I'd done 2 or 3, 5 maybe
Right.
sessions with them, and I was like, no. I couldn't see myself being tied down, because
Right.
as you mentioned, I had never had a real job yet.
Not really. Yeah.
And so then I was playing bass for another improv company called the Hot House on Lancashire.
Oh, that's right. I remember that.
And I was playing bass, and what we would do is, it was like some guys got together as a sax player, me on bass, keyboard player, and a drummer, and we would improv to their improv. So as they would do the scene, we would do a movie score on the fly. or we would try to lead them into a song,
Yeah.
or we would try to, we'd play them
Yeah.
in and out of scenes.
Huh.
And we would improv everything. We didn't rehearse. It was all just real good guys. And so I'm drinking a glass of wine on the street corner on Lancashire at intermission. And one of the girls in the improv group, introduces me to her husband. And it's Patty Hirsch, who is an editor at Marketplace. And he gives me his card and he says, what else do you do? And I said, well, I do some video editing and some audio sound editing and mixing and stuff. He goes, oh, well, we're always looking for engineers. Give me a call, and gives me his card. So I call him because I think, oh, I'm going to get some freelance work out of this.
Yeah.
And so I call him and he introduces me to the chief engineer, and who says, yeah, come on down, come on, take a look, check out the place, the studios. So I go down there and they go, yeah, let's try you out. So I go, okay. So I come in and kind of learn their system and stuff, because they were editing not in Pro Tools, but in a German company software called David, which is just spelled David. You just say David because it's German, and makes it David. And so I learned that real quick and was mixing by day 3 on Thursday of that week. They offered me a job.
Wow.
Full time. And I went, can I think about it?
It's a big step, because
it was a big step. And
it's a lot of years you've not worked for anybody.
Yeah. And I was 49, about to turn 50. This was, my birthday is in December.
Yeah.
And this was in November. And I thought, I could pick up some freelance work as people take off for the holidays and stuff. That's really all I was looking for.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was a big decision. It's public radio. If you don't know what Marketplace is, it's a national show, but it is public radio. So it didn't pay what I wanted it to in the first place. But I thought, what's the worst that could happen? I could quit in March. you know? Well, that was 15 years ago. So I took advantage of that. It just kind of, once again, kind of fell in my lap. I wasn't looking for it.
Again.
And I did not think I would be there that long. I didn't think I would do it that long. At first, because I was an engineer, I could kind of take off when I needed to and still do some gigs, which I did do. Like you said, I went to Hawaii with Buddy Holly, Pebble Beach. I did the Vladimir Putin invitation for the Webby Awards.
That's right.
While I was working there. And so about 5 years ago, I became manager of the department. And so I'm kind of like ingrained in there now.
Well, you're upper management now, or middle management.
Well, I would say lower management.
Lower management.
I don't know.
But it's Marketplace, and it's a big show.
It's a national show. Yeah,
it's over 800. And they'll know, they'll either know it or they won't. But the people that know it are like, wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, if you're a public radio person, you know it, because it's on 800 stations. It's on all the major markets.
Yeah,
it's 17 million listeners. So
yeah. And you worked directly with Kai Ryssdal. I know you went to China with him. I know you met and interviewed. You didn't personally interview, but you were there, and you have some great pictures of you with Obama, because you met him in like the desert, right? Like in the
he did a speech at a solar plant outside of Nevada.
Yeah, and you guys met him.
Yeah, at the last minute they said, yeah, you can come and interview him.
Yeah, it's great.
And because we were doing pieces about solar energy at the time.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of good things have come out of it. A lot of travel, and of course, now I just had a meeting with Houston Public Media, Public Broadcasting, and they were like, after the meeting, they were like, well, why don't you come and do this gig? Because our morning person, David Brancaccio, is going to Houston in a few weeks. And I said, no. I said, I send the younger guys. My days of getting on a plane or maybe over for that kind of stuff. But I'll send you somebody good. So it's a little different hat to wear. But it's all production these days. And because of, just like everybody else, because of the pandemic, I am here 4 days a week. I go into the office 1 day a week. So I'm in this room most days.
You moved to LA, and you were able to, from sale of your other home in Texas, you were able to buy a condo, a townhome in Los Angeles, and then you parlayed that into the home you're in now, and you're out in a nice area and have a nice big spread house. It's comfortable for you and your partner. So that's great. So
Yeah, I feel bad for the guys now, the younger guys that I've hired, for instance, because they go, yeah, I really want a house. And, my first house was $78,000.
right, in
Now
Texas.
granted, everything is relative. That was in
Yes.
Texas. That was in
Yeah.
the 80s.
Hmm.
Everything's relative. Interest rates were double digit at that time.
That's
So,
true. Yeah.
people are screaming about 6% for a house now.
Yeah.
My condo was at 6.5% the entire time I was in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of normal.
Yeah.
We lucked out where we bought this house right before the pandemic started
Yeah. Same for us. Yeah.
in 2019.
Yeah.
And so we good interest rate and
Yeah.
not crazy price. I mean, we had
Right.
to bid up,
Yeah.
but not
Yeah.
double like some
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
got into doing during the pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't want to get personal, but because I don't like to do that on this show, but there is a sense of staying in touch with the acting world because your partner is an actress,
Yes.
and you do a lot of projects with her where you have helped to direct uh, short films that she's done. You've helped to
Yeah.
mix those or cut those. You've helped with sound. You guys work together in a collaborative way a
Yeah.
lot of
I've
times.
I've directed her in two
Hmm.
one-person plays that we did
Right.
for solo festivals.
Yeah.
We have a couple of films and
Hmm.
scripts out that we have done
Right.
together
Yeah.
in film festivals. We've won a
Hmm.
couple of film festivals with our
Yeah.
scripts, believe it or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
And I've directed some other
Yeah.
another person did a one-woman show at a solo festival, and I directed her. So
Yeah.
I kind of keep one toe in it, I guess.
Right. So it's not, you didn't just completely go, okay, now I'm working at Marketplace. So it's nice that you're still sort of doing that.
Yeah.
So
And
is,
most of Marketplace is filled with people like that,
oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
It's a very creative show.
Yeah.
I think before I started listening to it, I think I had an impression it was a very dry show. It's really not. It's very interesting. It's very relatable because they talk about everyday things in relation to
Yeah.
the economy. So,
Yeah.
it's very interesting and very lively. Do you have a role that, I know you talked about Music Man earlier. Do you have a role that you played? I think Tevye was a great role for you. It was a great accomplishment, even though it was a long time ago. It was a great role. But do you have a role that you would like to play?
I hear I was adequate.
I didn't say adequate. Did I say adequate?
Yeah, I think
I
you
did
did.
not say adequate. I hope I didn't say adequate because it was more than that. Um, but do you have a role? I mean, you mentioned Music Man. Is there a role that you've always like, oh God, I really would love to play that role, or I would have loved to have played that role? So,
No, I really don't. I mean, I think because, I've seen Music Man live and the
mhm,
movie, of course, many, many
right,
times,
sure,
and just always a fan of that particular musical.
yeah,
And but yeah, you know, I haven't really had like I guess because I haven't done full-time acting where I've thought about it that way,
yeah,
like, oh, that would be a juicy part to do, or
yeah,
something like that.
yeah.
So
Is there a gig like that? Like, is there something in you? I mean, again, we've talked about so much, and I just want to tell you, we just scratched the surface. We didn't really delve that deep, because there's just a lot to cover. But I mean, uh, I mean, you've done a lot of diverse things. Is there something? Is there like a gig, or is there something that's like, oh, I never did that. I always wanted to do that.
well,
So
like I said earlier, that I don't really regret not working in other studios and stuff like that. But when I've been on set and
mm,
seen the way people operate, and I was never really part of that scene. I was always an independent person, kind of a
yeah,
one-man wrecking crew doing it all
yeah,
myself. And so I think back and go, boy, I would have learned quite a bit if I had just like done this or this or this. And I think that was
right,
part of my decision to move to go ahead and say yes to Marketplace, because I had thought about that a lot and thought,
right,
and there
yeah,
were a lot of things I did not know, oddly enough,
mm,
when I got into that, because I had not ever done radio.
yeah,
I'd not ever done,
yeah,
uh, as far as a technician person
right,
in
yeah,
radio.
yeah,
I had done, volunteered for Radio for the Blind as
hmm, hmm,
as a voice person
right,
a little bit, but I,
yeah,
technically I didn't do any of that
yeah,
stuff. So there were a lot of things that I just flat did not know, and they kind of
yeah,
threw me in the fire.
mm,
And I think I have a good sense of training people really well because of that when I hire new people,
yeah,
because I don't want to throw them in the fire.
right, yeah,
I don't want them to be in like a no-win situation and not know what to do
yeah,
during a show or during a
yeah,
session or
yeah,
something like that. especially a lot of our interviewees are, sometimes high-end people. You don't want to
Yeah.
waste their time.
Yeah. Because I know that also in your career in bands, you ended up sort of managing the bands as well as
I
being a
always was kind
player.
of that guy.
You
Yeah,
kind
I
of
was
always
always,
became the manager, road manager, or whatever. So, yeah.
well, I would be the guy that kept them booked, kept
Hmm.
the bands booked, and
Yeah.
I'd work with
Yeah.
the agents and keep us
Hmm.
booked and
Yeah.
do the deals that way.
Yeah.
And even when I got in Dash Riprock and the Dragons, after a year in it,
Yeah.
they had a lot of things that I was like, this is so stupid.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like,
I
why are we
didn't,
doing it this way?
yeah,
Yeah.
why are we doing it this way? This is not a good way to do it. For instance, they owned their own PA system and it
Hmm.
was in ill repair. They
Uh,
were always hiring like a freelance person to come in, run sound that was having to
hmm.
learn the system that day.
Yeah.
And I said, we're at the caliber where we should just be third partying this, hire
Yeah.
a sound company completely separate from us that just comes in. And when we walk in the building, it's all set up.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we moved to that
Smart.
and got, and we went through a few people that then wound up with a person probably
Hmm.
the last 3 years that I was in that
Yeah.
band. And he was great. And he had a crew person that would run
Yeah.
lights for him.
Yeah.
They do all the setup and we could just walk in with our instruments. So, so that kind of changed. And at that point, I kind of said, I kind of did my thing that I used to do at the bank where I said, I either have to shut it down or,
Right.
or
It's like,
redo it. And
or either, yeah.
I called a meeting with Dash Riprock and said, we either have to redo this or I got to quit.
Right. Yeah.
And when you do that, obviously you have to be prepared to get up and leave.
That's true.
So
That's
I would
true.
be prepared to leave and
Yeah.
go do something else. And so we came to an agreement that I would co-run the band with Dash.
Yeah.
And so I became co-Dash.
That's right. That's right. I remember you telling me
So
that.
that's what they would always call me then.
Kodash.
So he actually split his leader money with me.
Oh.
And then I started taking care of, I was already doing like arrangements for the band, especially when we added horns.
Hmm.
I was the one doing all the horn arrangements.
Yeah.
Because nobody else knew that part.
Yeah.
And so, we were doing Chicago and Gloria Stefan stuff, a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
horn,
Oh,
a lot of
yeah.
horn stuff to write
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And transcribe and do
Right.
arrangements of. So yeah, I was always kind of that guy that ran the band and played in the player coach kind of thing.
Hmm.
And so I look at my role now, because I came up for 10 years as an engineer
Hmm.
and then became the manager. I look at my role as manager. I manage like a musician still.
Hmm. Yeah.
I manage the guys like they're all in a band. As a
Yeah.
matter of fact, I was in a meeting today with everybody about goals for the year and stuff, all the other managers. And I made a comment about how the guys are so good because everybody but one is a musician.
Yeah.
And one of the other managers said, I can't believe you hired somebody that isn't a musician. I go, well, no, that's the one guy I didn't hire that was already there.
Yeah.
And I said, everybody else I've hired, you're right, is a musician. And
That's
it's a, it kind of goes hand in hand with engineering to me.
Right. Yeah.
Not that the one guy is bad at his job, but
yeah. So what's your best gig in all your long, like, thinking about gigs? Like, give me some highlights of like, this was like the best gig, best time I ever
there's
had.
Been there's some gigs that were like the biggest money gigs.
Sure.
That you kind of think about. And I would say those Kentucky Derby gigs were pretty glamorous kind of gigs. I remember we played 3 years in a row. The last 3 years I was in that band, 3 years in a row, we played a New Year's gig for, I think, Dr. Pepper. And it was at one of the big hotels in Dallas. And the money just kept getting, the manager just kept pushing the money. And this is in the 90s. And we're a cover band.
Right.
$17,500.
Wow.
We got for New Year's on my last year with that band.
Wow. Huh.
And so, those kind of, the Kentucky Derby party paid about 12 grand.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
So we were making, we were making more money than some traveling country acts.
Sure. Yeah.
That were on the radio.
Right.
So,
right.
So, and then the Buddy Holly gigs, same thing. They were just, sometimes it was crazy money. I would go, I would fly to some city and do 20 minutes
Hmm.
and it would be like, $500-600, and then fly
Right.
home and
Yeah.
expenses were covered,
Right.
and be
Yeah.
picked up in a limo like
Right.
stupid
Yeah.
stuff, you know.
Yeah. I've
And
had
so
those guilt feelings as well.
I
So,
never felt guilty, but
well, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
yeah, but yeah, so those gigs were great. I think the experience of doing that comedy tour in the Middle East was so eye-opening for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just seeing that, and going to China like you talked about for the
Right.
2 weeks
Yeah.
with the show
Yeah.
was really incredible. I'd never done a trip like that either.
Right. What's the worst gig you've ever done?
Probably we had a 4-piece band. It was still called Chateau, I think.
Hmm.
And we for some reason we just weren't booking a lot, and so we knew some country songs. And so we talked Emma, that same
No.
agent, into, well, just book us anywhere. It was one of those kind of things. It was just
Sounds
like
like it's the Blues Brothers.
it was the Blues Brothers.
Yeah.
And we played the Pink Lady Saloon in Fort Worth, and it was horrible. It was so country. I mean, it didn't have chicken wire
Right.
like the Blues Brothers, but it
Right.
was close.
It might as well have.
It was really close, and thank God the guitar player knew a lot of country songs.
Yeah.
And we got through it. And then another gig similar to that was, we used to play a lot of Air Force bases and Army bases.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Through Emma. We'd
Yeah.
go to Wichita Falls, play the.
Hmm.
We mostly played like the non-commissioned officers club or the officers club,
Right.
because we were
Yeah.
more of a variety band, not a rock band.
Yeah.
We got booked in the Airmen's Club one time.
Hmm.
This is all the new recruits just out of basic training, young, beer drinking, stupid.
Yeah.
What really protects your country, basically.
Right.
And it didn't matter what we did, we were not rock enough for these people.
Oh, no.
And we're pulling out everything we could possibly do. The stage was kind of rickety.
Hmm.
And we had a big PA system and everything. And the stage was real rickety on that side. And Gary Kelly, the keyboard player, was pretty active keyboard player.
Yeah.
Jumping
He
around.
stood and
He
played.
stood and played.
He was, really
And
frenetically.
back then, just to throw this in, since we were talking about tape earlier in recording, this was before synthesizers and stuff. So
Right.
if you wanted 4 different keyboard sounds, you had 4 different keyboards.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Right.
there was no call up a patch.
Right.
And now I've got strings,
Right. Yeah.
So he had a Hammond B3 organ with a spinning Leslie speaker system. He had a Fender Rhodes, a Moog, a mini Moog, and an ARP string ensemble.
My gosh.
And so it's like set up, stacked like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, if you've ever seen those kind of.
Yeah.
And so he's like rocking, and doing that. The stage starts getting a little more rickety, and our PA system just fell on the ground and just fell over. We got more applause for that than anything else we did the whole night. So that kind of tells you how lame we were. We were trying to do like AC/DC and ZZ Top and
Right. Yeah.
Stones and all of this stuff.
Oh,
and
my gosh.
Just sounded like nursery rhyme band doing it.
Right.
So
Right. That's funny.
yeah. So there were.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, as far as auditions, the stupidest audition I ever did, there again, it was the same agent that said, "Don't go then."
Right. Don't go then.
Sent me on an audition to audition for Barney,
Barney?
the
Oh, wow.
dinosaur,
Oh, my gosh.
because they shot that in Dallas.
Yeah.
And so I went, okay, and it was for a road show of Barney.
Right.
And so I go, and he said, just wear like shorts and a t-shirt and tennis shoes. Okay. So they teach me a choreography routine.
Right.
And I do it just in the air, just
Right.
by myself.
Sure.
I get called back. Now I'm going to be in the suit.
Oh, no.
And as I mentioned, I knew puppet people. So
Yeah.
I called them and said, how do you think this suit operates? So
Right.
that I get a little jump on it. And they gave me all this advice. They said, you probably, to do the mouth, will probably have a bicycle brake pedal in your
Right.
hand.
Right.
And a cable goes up and moves the mouth.
Right.
That's not the way it was at all. So they get the suit on me. It's 100 degrees in Dallas. It's in the summer. This is going to be for the fall, like a fall tour.
Oh, my gosh.
And so I get in the suit. And they go, I'm sorry, the little fan is not working. So the air conditioning for the suit is not working.
Oh my.
And to do the mouth, it was like a football helmet thing
Right.
across here and had a wash rag taped to it, and you had to bite it and move your head.
Oh my gosh. Ugh.
So I had to do the same choreography that I had learned the week before at the original audition in the
Wow.
suit. And so you're holding your arms like a dinosaur up like this, and doing
Oh
your
my
mouth like this.
God.
And I did the first routine, which was like a little marchy kind of thing,
Sure.
walking around, and they played the music.
Right.
And they go, okay. And I went, get me the hell out of this thing. And I said, get the head off. I'm yelling, get the head off of me. Get it off of me. I mean, I couldn't breathe.
Oh my
And they
gosh.
pulled the head off, and I'm dripping wet. I'm just
Right.
sopping wet.
Right.
And I go, there's no way I could do this for 5 more minutes. I said, much less do a show. I'm so sorry to waste your time. And they went, I said, the guy that does this for the show must be a bowling ball and have a neck like this. And they went, oh yeah, he does. And so I go, well, okay, there you go. I'll see
Yeah.
you.
They had designed this suit based on him. That's awful.
Based on
So
him.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's I
So
never heard that story. That's great.
yeah. So it was just like it was just the most horrible audition I think I've ever done.
So what advice, we talked earlier about it. You never was a plan to set out to do this. It just sort of happened because you just sort of kept doing things and saying yes. That was a big part of your mantra, was just say yes. But is there any sort of advice that you would give to somebody who either wants to get into becoming a musician or becoming a gig worker or becoming somebody working in the studio? Is there some sort of piece of advice you would give to them starting out?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me if I went to some recording school or something like that, and I did, and I
Right.
always make the
No.
joke and say I learned
Yeah.
it in the streets,
Hmm.
and uh, and pretty much. But you can do that. When I hire, I've had to argue with HR people about the resumes that I get.
Hmm.
That I like hone in on resumes that look like probably like mine.
Right.
I mean, I know what I know,
Hmm.
and I go, this person would work in this gig because I see the same things that I had, where my resume did not have jobs, it had things I had done,
Hmm.
and so I had HR call me back one time and go, do they have a resume that has like the listings of the job? I go, there's no jobs.
Yeah.
This person, look at what they've done. I'm yelling at them. It's like, so uh, I think now people are starting to look at it that way a little bit more. For
Yeah.
instance, a big turn is like no college is fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
In Silicon Valley, for instance, it's like
Right.
if you've got a bunch of coding under your belt and you didn't go to college, we're happy. We don't care.
Yeah.
And so that's a big change. Whereas that
Yeah.
used to be a huge thing. It's like a college degree, no matter,
Yeah.
even if you weren't going to use whatever you went to college for.
Right.
That always cracked me up too. It's, well, they
Yeah.
went to college. That was the main
Yeah.
thing. So I think making yourself available, being available like you do,
Hmm. Yeah.
you're available. And
Yeah.
so when the phone rings, you can say yes. You don't have to say,
Hmm.
oh, let me talk to my boss and see if I can get off
Right.
work. Because they're calling the next person by the time you do
Right.
that.
Exactly.
And then the stupid things like be on time.
Yeah.
I learned that in Texas Boys Choir.
Yeah.
Being on time, showing up for the gig on time, having you don't wear brown shoes with a black tux,
Yeah.
just things like that. Because people would ask me back then, why did I work so much? And I would say, I show up on time and I don't wear black shoes with
Yeah.
a brown shoes with a black tux, and my shirt doesn't look like I slept in it.
And you didn't cause problems. You came in, you did the gig, you did your job,
Yeah,
you knew your job, and you did it, and you went home, and that was it. There was not any drama with you.
no,
You didn't cause a lot of drama, and
no,
you were easy to work with to a degree because I know you'd speak up and cause drama
yeah,
that way
sure,
and
I
go,
did.
"Hey, this is not right." But generally, if somebody called you to play bass to fill in for somebody,
That's what I did.
you would just show up and play bass and then go home. And there was like
Yeah,
that was great, no
I didn't try to
problem.
lead the band.
Right? Yeah.
I became a better band leader the more I did freelance
Sure.
sideman
Yeah.
jobs,
Yeah.
because I would see what bothered the band leader from that
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
position and
Yeah.
what bothered me. as a band leader and hiring other people. And
Right.
we had a bass player / tuba player in the Dixieland band that was like, we decided to find him humorous and comical, but he griped about everything. He was just one of those guys that griped about everything.
Yeah.
Complained about the directions that you gave him. And this is back before cell phones and Google Maps and everything else. You had to look it up on a map and find your
Thomas
way.
Guide.
Yeah, Thomas Guide.
Right.
And find your way to a gig
Mm-hmm.
that you've never been to that place before.
Right.
And allow enough time to get there and all, and in Texas, especially, things are so spread out. So I think, all of those things were great training grounds for, everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I moved out here, people seemed a little flakier out here in LA. You might have noticed that when you moved.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Too. I was used to people being on time and doing what they said they were going to do, and out here was a little different. So that took a little getting used to. But then, with Marketplace, I remember my boss later told me, like a year later, he says, I thought she would not show up on time and just quit because I was just Mr. Freelance. He just didn't think
you were
I
a
would
musician.
last.
Yeah.
Yeah. He just didn't think I would last at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he had been in public radio his entire life.
Right. Yeah.
So, that's all he did. That's all he did.
Yeah.
But I've outlasted. In my first 10 years, I had 5 managers.
Yeah.
So when I was offered the job, I remember saying, is this a 2-year gig?
Right.
But I've been in it for 5. I've been doing it for 5 years. So
yeah.
But really, all the things that I've learned over the all the years have, is what makes me a decent manager for.
It's serviced you. Yeah, it's serviced you in the position you're in now. Absolutely. Yeah. It's an accumulative profession, I think, always, especially in the entertainment business, and especially when you start moving to things like this where you're managing other people. It's always helpful. So
but it's really no different than a band.
Yep, that's true.
I have a band. It's still a band.
Yeah.
It's still, everybody wants to, be featured.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to know that they're doing a good job. Everybody wants good feedback.
Yeah.
And pride of ownership of what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same in a band. It's not any. It's not any different.
Yeah. Do you have any final words?
No, I think just. I used to say a long time ago when somebody would quit and go, I'm going to quit and teach school, be a band director or something like that, which happened a lot. And I would go, well, that's one more person out of my way. Right.
Yeah. One less person coming up the works. Yep.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it. It's like,
I go, good for them.
Mm-hmm. Get out of my way.
Yeah.
Right. You're my slot at the audition that I didn't get.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever that is. Anyway. Well, we have been talking with my brother, Jeff Peters, on Stage Perspective, and I thank you for listening. If you like what you heard here, give a little comment, give it a like, and there's other videos for you to see on this channel of Stage Perspective. Lots of other videos to watch, and you can subscribe and get notified when new ones pop up. And thank you, and have a wonderful day. Thank you again, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.